Well, hey, power agents and one and all, this is Daryl Davis. I've got a really special power agent to interview. It's Margaret Trautmann. Hi, Margaret.
Hi, how are you, Daryl?
I'm so great. I'm so excited that you were doing this, and because I know how super busy you are. I keep seeing you listed another multi-million-dollar listing here and there on Facebook. You're just kicking butt. So, but before we get into the conversation, please, could you share with everybody your contact information so if they want to send you referrals or reach out to you or ask questions?
Absolutely, and I'm available for questions if anyone has any. It's Margaret Trautmann, and my telephone number is 516-361-4646, and I work for Compass in Locust Valley. So feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. So now, Margaret, let's first start with your background, like where you are, production level, and how long you've been in real estate.
Okay, so I had my killer year this year, and I sold $45 million worth of inventory. And I have to credit the very, very rich because they have now come back to shop, and they are actually buying the big mansions where they haven't been buying them for, since 2002 or three. They just became overly expensive to carry. No one lived like that anymore, but they seem to see a lot of value in those properties, and therefore they're purchasing them, taking their money out of the market, going all cash and buying them and renovating them. So I have to admit that's really been a very, very helpful for me this past year.
So I'm just curious to touch on that for a second. So, what changed in 2002 to now? Is it because the stock market hit kind of a ceiling and they've cashed out? Is it the prices of that level for them has come down from back then?
That's a good question. I try to think about that all the time. In early 2000 up to 2006, before Lehman Brothers went over in 2008, they were actively buying and elevating themselves, and it was sort of important for them with neon lights and everything. But then as time went on and the market changed and Lehman Brothers went under, it was very risky for them to buy the very large properties. And I'm talking about 25 acres, 100 acres. Yep. I'm talking about big properties, and the mansions themselves are 30,000 square feet and 40,000 square feet. And no one lives like that. That means you need a full staff. And the taxes in Nassau, where I sell, are so incredibly high. It's not even funny. I was going for one listing over in Old Westbury. It was 100 acres. And there was a mansion and lots of other buildings on the property, as well as barns and houses. I mean, it just was spectacular. And the taxes on that 100 acres was $800,000 without the village tax, which was another 200. So every year it was $1 million just to pay for the taxes, and that wasn't even turning on the lights. I mean, that is just every year it's $1 million. So there are not a lot of people out there that want to live like that anymore. There are a few, but they stopped buying them. I think they felt safer putting their money in the market at the time and investing it. And now it seems like they're taking their money out of the market, which is a little concerning to me. I'm watching that. And I'm wondering why they're doing that, unless they have so much freaking money that they can just throw it away. But again, the prices back in the early 2000s were more in the 20 million and the 30 million and teens. We're now on below 10 million, even for waterfront properties. So there's a lot of value, but the taxes didn't go down. That's
they did. Right, they didn't. All right, so I know a lot of agents are probably their head is spinning listening to these kind of numbers and these. And by the way, Long Island, New York is pretty expensive. Like, for example, that $1 million a year in taxes. What was the listing or selling price of that property?
It ended up selling for $21 million.
Yeah. So
it's sold to a developer. So that's a good question. He's going to put in a bunch of condominiums.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So it's safe to say that you play on the high end of the market with real estate. How long have you been in real estate now?
Okay, so I've been in the business for 31 years. I started out in a very small boutique company, which was really, really, it was nice. However, when I started out, I had babies, or I was still having babies, so I needed to sell less houses and I needed to get in the upper end as fast as I could because I needed to, make a certain amount of money. So, and that was my goal, no one else's goal, but that was what I was going to do. I wasn't going to sell 50 houses. I was going to sell 5 big ones if I could. And so I started out with that, the small boutique company, and it was nice. However, I saw that Daniel Gale was selling all the the high-end houses and all the big ones, and I needed to get into that market. So I left there, and I was with Daniel Gale for 25 to 26 years.
Great company.
And I definitely elevated myself to be able to do that. And then when Compass came to town, I jumped on board with them and have been so very happy with them.
Okay. All right.
So 31 years.
So that now in that beginning, how long did you stay with that that first company? And in that first year, what did you do as far as production level? What was your average sales price? If you can, but remember that far back.
I do. I remember my first listing. I was there for 5 years, and my first listing was $375,000. And a good friend of mine was starting her catering business, and she said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you my listing if you have a party at your house where I can show everyone what I can do, and we'll do a swap." And that's exactly what we did. So that was my very first listing. My second listing was not a good story. Very close friend of mine. I literally was walking through the door on my first day to start the business, start working, and introduce myself to the office. And the phone rang, and it was an emergency. And my husband said, "You have to get over to Alice's house." I said, "Well, I'm being interviewed by all these people here. I can't go now." And he said, "Frank just shot himself, and the police need you to identify the body because she can't do it." So my face dropped, and my broker looked at me and said, "What? You look like you look like a ghost." I said, "I have to go and look at a body. I have to identify this guy." And he said, "Oh, great, your very first listing." And I thought I was going to throw up. And I said, "If this is what this business is about, I am not doing it." So
Wow.
that was my second listing. It was
Wow.
really hard, really, really hard.
Wow.
But so yeah, I had a great time at that company.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I didn't make a lot of money because every time I went into a listing presentation, I lost the listing to much more experienced people. So I had to figure out how I was going to get there, and I had to figure out either I had to join them or I had to fight them. And without my experience, joining them was the smartest thing I could do. So
When you say join them, so explain that.
I had to leave Piping Rock and go to Daniel Gale.
Oh, I see. So you kept losing business
To Daniel Gale.
to Daniel Gale, the company, you're not talking about individual agents. All right. So when you went to Daniel Gale, though, so you're still a new agent, you don't have the experience, you still would have had that challenge, I would think, where somebody would say, how long have you been doing this? How many houses have you sold? Da, da, da. How did you get through that in the beginning?
So that's a really good question. So what I did was I started to volunteer to help other brokers, top-end brokers, in their business. And I would go, I'd wash their car for them, not myself, I'd take it to the car wash. I would run their errands for them. I would help them with their open houses. And the entire time that I was doing that, I was studying them and seeing how they got to that luxury market that I needed to reach. And I eventually ended up pretty quickly as a teammate with a very elderly woman who just didn't have the energy. And she literally was marketing the Woolworth Mansion, or had the connection to Woolworth Mansion and other mansions, the Glen Cove Mansion, which was Harrison Conference Center back then. So she asked me to join her because she saw that I was really, helping, and I could do whatever she asked me to do. And it just worked out really brilliantly. So I literally was handed a gift, and I was
Got it.
But I seriously, I went to every single open house for every luxury house on the market. I picked the brains of the brokers that were having the open houses. I would call them after and ask them questions about it. I memorized the houses, which I have a very good, a really great ability to memorize houses and their layouts. And even I can tell you what color the countertops were. I mean, it just becomes easy for me. So I learned, this sounds so stupid, but I needed to know how to talk to the rich. Even though my parents, luckily, were connected to very, very wealthy people never scared me, so I could easily talk to them. And that's one thing I always say to an agent: don't be afraid of them. They don't want you to be intimidated by them. They don't want you to be their equal, but they just want you to be able to be calm and talk to them and connect one way or another, whether it's the car that they're driving, whether it's the restaurants that they go to, whether it's what they read. And I would go through these houses and I would look on their night table and I would see what books they're reading. I mean, you have to sort of put yourself in the position of who they are, what's important to them, what they're reading, what they're doing, what they're eating, what they're driving, how, what club do they belong to, what's their favorite sport. And you can do all that by just looking at someone's house, by looking at their trophies, or that kind of thing. You've
said some really powerful things. 3 things so far that just stand out to me. Number one is you were really definitely committed from the get-go to break into this market. This was the market that you wanted to do very beginning on in your career. That was number one. Number two is because of that commitment, you did everything necessary to support that, where you studied other agents who were working that market, hanging out with those agents, but making yourself available as basically, it sounded like an assistant that you weren't getting paid to do, but you were being an assistant and shadowing this other really successful agent, which opened up doors for you. This is great stuff. And then, of course, the third is getting to know the clientele, right? So what do they like to read? What do they like to do? What is their way of thinking? So you can relate and connect to those people. That's awesome stuff.
And as you know, it's all about learning. Never, ever stop learning. It's the most important thing. Going to your classes is the most important thing. You're always teaching them something. The interesting thing about going to your class, let me just tell you, I have notes like crazy. The one thing I don't do, and I should do more often, is go back and review those notes. I have piles and piles and piles of notes, and it's actually like going back to school, but then you pick up one thing or something that might be able to help you in a listing presentation or in negotiating or something else. So I'm a strong believer, and you should always go to school. Always. It's just motivating, and it's helpful, especially through you, because I mean, you'll do a cartwheel in class just to get their attention. That's important.
I appreciate you saying that, Margaret. And it's interesting that you would actually say that, because just the other day, I'm working on some new material. And I went back to notes from 20 years ago. And I was just going through everything just to see. And there is stuff in there that I think is still timely, still awesome ideas that I stopped teaching, that I forgot. Right. And so it's true what you're saying about going back to your notes, because there might be no nuggets in there. There might be gold in there that you're totally missing. So I appreciate you saying that. Let me ask you this. So in the beginning part of your career, was there any time, or not just beginning, any time in your career that you had some kind of struggle, either personal or business, like really was a huge challenge, but you got through it? Is there any time that you can remember like that?
Oh, absolutely. So when Lehman Brothers went under in 2008, everything came to a halt in the luxury business. No houses were being sold. I mean, the highest price back then was more of a $5 million compared to $25 million. And so I needed to bring myself back into a selling range, and a range that I never even knew before. And the reason, and it's interesting because, and I'm glad you asked this question, because this is really important too. what happened was I started talking to financial people. I started talking to people that I had sold houses to that were in the financial business. I started talking to my mortgage broker, and I started talking to other mortgage friends. And I was trying to say, basically, where are we? Where are we going? What do you see? Because they're the ones that probably have more of an insight than I would. I feel like I'm down, my feet are on the ground, and they're way up here with a lot of knowledge. And every single person basically said to me, you need to readjust your selling range to about $1.5 million and under. And that to me was like, I can't do that. And
So they told you, they told you to go the opposite direction, and that's go even lower. Okay.
Absolutely. And because nothing in the high end was selling at all. And they were absolutely right. And for me, that was devastating. That was so hard for me to do, because what happened was I would go on listing presentations and the people would say, well, why would you give a listing to Margaret when she only lists $10 million houses and above? Well, here I am with all this experience and everything, and I'm at their doorstep saying, I'll do this for you. I'd be happy to represent you. And them saying, well, you're too qualified for me. And I would say, well, how could I be overqualified? So it was really devastating.
Interesting.
It was really hard for me to do. And then after a while, I just adjusted. I think I probably just adjusted my presentation and said, you know, look, I need to help you because you need me. I'm more experienced. I have a lot of great ideas. I think outside the box. So I had to sell myself in a different way. So it was a hard 3 years. I mean, I made money, don't get me wrong. I made money, but it was really hard on me. So I had to learn the inventory. I had to start all over. I had to go to open houses in a lower end where I needed to sell. And then I needed to connect with people that were first time buyers that I'd never done that. I'd never done that before. And actually, to be honest with you, the first time buyers when the luxury market was hot, were the kids of very, very wealthy people. But the kids, you can call them first time buyers, but when daddy's paying the $2 million mortgage or giving them $2 million or whatever, they were really not I wasn't really working with them. I was working with daddy.
It was really the money. There was really the money bags behind the scenes, the parents.
Exactly. So again, educate. I had to figure out who my buyers were. I had to figure out what they wanted. I needed to know that whole group of people wanted a house that was already renovated. They wanted a small property. They didn't want anything to take care of. Both the husband and the wife then started getting a job because they needed to make ends meet, and they wanted to bring up their children the way they were brought up. And in order to do that, they needed 2 incomes. Okay, so now when you have 2 incomes, both people are working and the kids are in school. If you want to renovate your house, or let's say you want a brand new kitchen, someone has to be home to meet that plumber and open that door. But if you're both at work, who's going to meet them? So doing any kind of renovation is very difficult for 2 people that are working in the house. So, and think about it, if all of a sudden you take the day off and you're going to meet the kitchen people, whether they're measuring or they're putting it in or whatever, and they can't come, COVID hits, or they can't come because they're sick or they're backed up or whatever, you've now taken 1 day off from your vacation, and a day off you can't even play with your children because they're in school. So it's a lose-lose situation. And that's why all of a sudden, when I was doing interviewing for listings and they didn't have a new kitchen, I would say, is there any way you could put one in? It'll sell faster because of the situation and the buyers at hand today.
Interesting.
So you really have to educate yourself. You have to look at the other side, not me going in to get the listing, but who am I representing today?
Now, when it comes to so I'm just thinking of some of the agents thinking, well, it's like, you have these big world problems. I had to go from, 20 million down to 2 million or 1 million. And then some agents like, geez, I'm selling $300,000 homes. What would you say is different? Is there more? Would you say that there's more work in marketing or selling or putting, these deals together than maybe the agent who's on the lower end price range, like the $300,000-$400,000 price range?
I think it's all the same amount of work.
Okay.
And I would say every range is different. The lower you go, the more you're going to have bidding wars now. And again, our times change constantly and you have to be on top of it.
Right.
But if you've got that lower, and again, we don't have any inventory, where back then it was more flooded, and more options to buy and look at 20 houses instead of 3.
Let me, let me ask it this way, Margaret. So let's say you get it, you just, we were talking about this listing that I saw come in. It's just under 9 million on Long Island. This, and it's a vacant property, something like that. Would you do a public open house on these types of properties or no?
No, I don't. In order to, well, particularly since they were empty and no one lived in them, what I do is I have to have proof of funds from the buyer, and the agent has to provide that. And we have to have a copy of their license. And interestingly enough, sometimes it's harder to get a copy of their license than it is to get the proof of funds. Then I call on the proof of funds to make sure it's legit, because it takes me 2 or 3 hours to show it. So I can't go running off to show a 30,000 square foot mansion and spend all my time and energy trying to sell it to somebody that's not qualified. So
now you go as a listing agent, even if another agent is showing it, you would still be at that showing as the listing agent at these types of properties. Yeah.
Absolutely have to do it, because I know all the history, I know all the facts, and I can tell you 99% of the people that go in as agents representing buyers don't know they don't have any idea what they're showing. And I don't need false information flying around. So I just need to be there, and I can tell from the second they walk through the door if they're going to buy or if they're interested. You know, they drop their shoulders if they're not. They literally will drop their shoulders and be totally disappointed from the first step into a front door.
Really? That's interesting.
And if all of a sudden their shoulders go up and they're looking around, they can fake, I don't like it, because they think they're going to get a better deal if they fake it. But I can tell immediately. And that's another thing you can learn about real estate is personalities and how people react when they go into a house. So, I mean, they're fun things that you can learn.
When it comes to marketing, what are some of the strategies that you do to market? Because obviously a homeowner who's got, this is true for any house, but they want to know what the agent's going to do. And I think sometimes agents think the homeowner at the higher end expects something different than what we might do on the lower price range. So what do you tell a homeowner as far as what you're going to do marketing the property?
Well, I have a whole list of things that I will do for them, depending upon if it's a waterfront or it's not a waterfront. But mostly right now, and again, our times change constantly, and now it's social media that is really gaining a lot of momentum. So I do a lot of social media. I hired 3 other companies to post for me, as well as me posting. So the posts are a little different on all of them. And I will post on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest. I'll put Pinterest on there. And then, you know, I Google. I mean, I'll do everything I can. But, you know, everybody's sort of doing the same thing. They're getting the videos going inside and outside, photos, and we try to get the news, depending upon how famous the house is or whatever. We try to get the news involved, like whether it's Newsday or something that will bring attention to it. But that doesn't always. I have to be honest with you. It's a lot of luck. It's a lot of luck trying to find the perfect buyer for the perfect house, no matter what price range you're in, because there's no perfect house out there. And if there was a perfect house, someone's living there and they're not moving. So it's hard to get people to compromise because they have this huge wish list. So, you know, it doesn't matter what price range it's in. You really have to find the perfect buyer. So I also say that to my homeowners. I always say, you know, as hard as I'm going to work, and I never drop the ball, because when I take a listing, I fall in love with the listing. And if I don't fall in love with the listing, then I let you go, because it's hopeless for me.
Right. If you're not sold, how can you sell to somebody else? I had a power agent who asked about, they had a high-end listing and they thought that the buyer was gonna come out from another state like Silicon Valley area, California. And so their question was, how do I market to those types of buyers in another state? Is there a strategy that works for that, or just the social media hopefully will pick it up?
Well, my company is all about, networking and everything else. So we have a platform just in our company that you post constantly, and
Okay.
other, every agent goes on it every single day to see the new listings or wherever. They also have networking where if anybody has a California person, you have the ability to call that area and just say, what's the personality like? What are they looking for? What are your buyers do? Like, for example, I could do that for our buyers here. We have the ability to really, it's a very close knit company, a lot of trust, and everybody's out there to help. I mean, it's just so great.
You just gave me a thought on that. So if an agent is not part of a company that has the structure that you have of the internal networking, what they could do, I guess, is if they they can find Facebook groups, for example, for Silicon Valley real estate or something like that, and network with other agents in those other groups, which may be kind of similar to what you guys have at your company, that concept of internally networking with agents from that area. So,
well,
all right.
So why can't you just interview them and ask them a million questions? Why are people afraid to ask questions? I mean, when I have a buyer, the first question I ask them is, if I drove you up to your dream house today, what would you do? And I cannot tell you over the years how many things have come up. Like, well, my grandmother's about to die, and when she dies, I'm probably going to inherit X. And then I'll say, well, then when she dies, you give me a call, because we're not going to go shopping until you have the money in your pocket. Or, I mean, they will tell you, well, they just come up with these excuses, and that they're not motivated, but questions will definitely get you, exactly what you need to know in order to help them. And they understand that you want to help them.
That's a powerful question. If we find you the right house today, how did you word it? Go ahead.
Well, if I found your dream house today, what would you do?
Well, what would you do?
What would you do? Would you buy it? What are we waiting for?
I would take pictures and put it on my vision board.
Exactly.
That's not what I want to hear. I want to hear you're going to buy the damn thing. All right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I don't take a lot of buyers out, to be honest with you. I'm more of a listing agent.
Okay.
Although today, again, I have to switch my direction. I'm trying to find buyers, but that I call taking buyers out real estate, not real estate.
I like that. Real estate.
Real estate, because you drive them and drive them.
How do you find your buyers, and how do you find your sellers? I think I know, a lot of these questions I can guess what your answer is going to be, but I want the folks watching to hear from your own lips. How do you prospect for the business?
Well, finding the buyers, open houses. Open houses are great, because millennials today, and I'm not putting anybody out there down if you're a millennial, but they don't like to hook up with a broker. They think they can do it on their own. And there's so much to learn on the internet that you really, as far as they're concerned, they really don't think they need you. And they think they can do it themselves. So even when they come to an open house, we're not even sure they're giving us their full name. It could be somebody else's name or someone else's email or whatever when they sign in. But open houses is the way to get a buyer today. If you can volunteer and help anybody do an open house, you can pick up buyers. And that's exactly how I train my people to do open houses, and the right questions to ask. And again, you just keep asking the questions. Are you working with another broker? And if they say no, why are you not working with another broker? And tell me what you need and to change your mind to work with a broker. And this is what a broker can do for you. And open houses and a lot of questions is the number one way, I think, to get buyers. The other way is to I play a lot of tennis. And so when I play tennis, my friends know I'm in real estate, and someone's always dying, someone's always sick, whatever.
Oh,
I just
gosh.
sort of pay attention, and I am not an ambulance chaser. It's the last thing I will do. But, they're the first ones to say, did you know so-and-so's getting divorced? And I'm like, ding, there's a listing.
Country club chatter.
Exactly.
That's the internet for high-end folks. It's the country club.
Yeah. But again, you can also volunteer and be on charities, and you'll hear the same thing. Once you get that small group of people that are working in the same direction, you learn to trust each other, and conversations come up. And people will help you find someone if you ask them. But if you don't ask them, they may not even know you're in the business. Just say, oh, by the way, if you have a friend, let me know. A lot of times I'll say to people, I know you're not looking for a house, but maybe you know someone who's looking for it. Next thing you know, they're saying, oh my gosh, my husband and I just last night were talking about putting our house in the market. How's the market? So you don't directly ask them for the listing, but you basically say, I've got this beautiful listing coming on the market. If you hear of anyone, would you please, let me know, or let them know that I have something, I'd love to show it to them. So there are a lot of roundabout ways of asking for help.
I'm listening to you periodically. I have, because I talk about how important metaphors and analogies are. So sometimes when people are sharing like you are now, a metaphor pops into my head, a visual, and the one that I just had now was the lightning rod on top of the Empire State Building. Like that's it. I'm hearing that's who you are. Like you're a lightning rod where you promote you, and because you're out there participating in places, whether it's the tennis or volunteering, that's how you are actually prospecting and attracting business. Is that a safe assumption?
Absolutely, absolutely. But again, the other thing is, a lot of times people will end up in their office and they'll be sitting there and they can't figure out why the phone's not ringing. But you know what? Out of sight, out of mind. Go out to lunch. Go out to lunch with a friend. Be visible. And if you're not visible, your business is going to die. And it sounds stupid, but snail mail really works. Take your stats from your company, put your big fat picture on it, and send it out to, if you want to do a certain area, stick to a certain area. If you want to pick and choose, get your your CRM going, get all your contacts together, and you'd be surprised. Drive by somebody's house that and just say, gosh, I was just, texting is amazing. I just drove by your house. How are you guys doing? The next thing you know, they may be calling you and saying, I have a friend who's looking, I'm going to give them your name, or we're thinking of selling, or whatever. If you know people and you're driving, even if you're not driving by somebody's house and you just want to say, hey, I just want to say hi, how are you doing? Just checking in with people is an amazing, powerful way of bringing yourself back into, the world of, hey, by the way, I'm in real estate. If you need any help, or if you know anybody.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So it's really about connecting with people, building relationships with people. That's where the real estate starts. That's how you find buyers and sellers, is by promoting you, not so much the listing, not so much the trying to find leads, but just promoting yourself and connecting and building relationships with others.
Exactly. And when you feel like you're lost and you're spinning your wheels, don't give up. Don't get depressed. Turn your attitude around. Start to laugh. Get out there. Life is not that, it's not that serious. You can do it. You just have to put yourself out. You have to change your attitude. You have to find some kind of humor in it. Because if you don't, it is a very, very, very difficult job. I remember when I first started, I think the first 2 years of my career, I cried the whole time. I couldn't believe my friend was going to give that listing to someone and wasn't going to give it to me. But you know what? Now I understand there's so many fish in the sea, and there's a reason why someone doesn't give you that listing. It may be because their cousin has a license, or it may be because they've done business with them in the past. Maybe this person actually helped your child when they needed a special doctor. Maybe there's something there, a connection that's so strong that's why they get the listing. And heck, you know what? There's nothing worse than, I mean, there's nothing better than being second or third on a listing as far as I'm concerned. You know what they say? First in marriage, second in love. I know, first in love, second in marriage, and third on a listing. I mean, it works. But don't give up. Don't be depressed. It's not, that's when you're going down the drain. You got to pick up your bootstraps, get out there and make it happen. Just, hey, here I am. I mean, people at the grocery store come up to me and say, hi, Margaret. I have no idea who they are. It's crazy. But again, when I started out and it was very abusive, and it's a very difficult job. People blame you for everything. Everything's your fault. Whether a photographer didn't take pictures properly or whatever, you're going to get yelled at. And the only thing, you have to repeat this in your mind. The most important thing I tell everybody, you have to remember that this asset is the biggest asset they're ever going to have in their life. And they are handing that over to someone they don't know. And they're scared to death. They're scared to death. So you have to constantly remember, they're not upset with me. They're not mad at me. They're just scared. They're really scared. And the other thing is, you never, ever, ever, doesn't matter how many questions you ask about someone who's selling their house, they're never going to tell you the full truth. They're never going to tell you if their marriage is falling apart, if they're having financial problems. You're not going to get the real story. So you just have to just keep plugging away, do the best you can do, and don't let don't emotionally take it personally, which is really hard to do, really hard. So
wow, that I know that whole dissertation you just went through was awesome. That was so right on, Margaret. That was so great. What would you say to an agent? You've said a lot already, but what would you say to an agent that is struggling right now? They've been in real estate for a while. So they kind of know what they need to be doing, but they may be in a rut and they may be in a tailspin, and it's hard for them to see what's possible because they see more of what's not working versus what can. What would you say to them?
I would definitely call your accountant. I would call your financial person. I would call your mortgage person. I would have a night, I would take them to lunch or coffee or just talk to them on the phone. I would ask them, where do you see the market going? What am I missing? How do you see, or can you give me a little advice on what I'm missing? Who's borrowing the money today? And then I would study the millennials, because they're our buyer today. What do they want? What don't they want? I would jump on, I mean, charities. If you don't play any sports, I would jump into some kind of charity, something Girls and Boys Club. If you love those, you know, whatever it is, something you love and something you can, because you're going to meet people in there too. But volunteering, but definitely start talking to people and find out, what am I missing here? But it's a really, Daryl, it is a tough market getting those listings right now. So
Right now,
everybody's struggling. You're not the only one. You're really not the only one. But you can change it around. Just basically, you gotta just change your attitude and get out there, because that's what it's all about. I mean, I remember when I had to knock on doors. I brought steak in my back pocket for the dog that was going to attack me. I threw it right at him. I mean, say that. No, I'm just kidding. But remember, it was tough. It was really tough, that cold calling, and brutal.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. You're right. This market is a challenge, especially when it comes to the listings. But probably the agent that's going to succeed is the one that doesn't quit. Like, you really haven't failed until you quit. If you're still in it, it's kind of like the stock market. Like, just at the time of us, having this conversation, the market's taking a hit, and but it hasn't hit the people that haven't sold, right? That they're staying in and just hanging on and just waiting for it to turn back. So the same is true about real estate, right? Yeah. Don't quit.
And maybe even team up with a friend. Even if it's temporary, come on, let's get out there together and let's try something new. Let's go to the train station at first thing in the morning, even though people aren't commuting that much by trains, but they're starting to. And let's bring printouts of all the houses that have sold this week. And let's hand these out. Let's get people to see who we are. Put your poster at the train station. You're available. You're in real estate. Anywhere you can possibly. I do my local paper every week. I put something in my local paper, even if it's just my name. Call me if you need help or whatever. You got to get your name out there somehow. And social media works, but again, mailings work really well too.
Yeah, I believe mailings, we just we added print on demand for the power agents so they can print and mail stuff out, because I believe what's old is new again. And, I in my mailbox, I don't get too many agents mailing me stuff. So that tells me that's virgin territory, and it's a place where agents should be. It should be going back to the mailbox.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. All right. So listen, I want to thank you. I know how busy you are. This was incredible, Margaret. Thank you so much for being generous with your time and sharing your ideas and your experience and trials and tribulations. Again, if an agent wants to reach out to you for anything, what's the best way to get you?
You can text me 516-361-4646.
Awesome.
Happy to help.
Thank you so much, Margaret. So you stay right there. I just want to say to everybody, thank you so much. It was I hope this was beneficial to you. I know for me, it was incredible. And, don't forget, we don't just help people buy and sell real estate. We help them get to their next level. You make a difference in people's lives, and real estate is a tool that you use. So stay safe, stay focused, and don't forget to keep smiling.